finally just. I thought, okay, I got like 4 or 5 Raspberry Pis, I could put all the stuff on there. Finally just. I thought, okay, I got like 4 or 5 Raspberry Pis, I could put all the stuff on there.
Jeremy? Good, how are you doing? Clapping your hand.
Not from doing anything cool, tennis. All right.
256 gig SSD, Windows 11,
Right.
Ethernet, or gig Ethernet, it's just 130.
Oh, gosh.
My
wife.
Intel or AMD?
Okay. Let's go back to Hawaii.
Gotta go in like outside the stall. Yeah. Using the rest.
Tech and new, yeah.
And yes,
It's like this was right.
Rats.
Rats.
yeah.
So his own case. His game. All right. Anyway, so we're leaving all these masses. About these actions. Anyway, so.
Yeah.
Yes, not.
This one.
Yeah. And the other way, yeah.
Really?
So.
But I actually, I would push it all the way up.
Hey, Brittany, can you hear me? Brittany, will you test the sound, please?
but he's,
That's Chadwell.
okay. And then you contrast him. He just,
Yeah, he's a big baseball player. It looks like he could hit him with his arm and the ball would go. You know what I mean?
Start video.
no, that's
Or you can just keep having people quit.
Have you gotten any baseball games yet this summer?
Yeah, well, we went to the opening day
Did you?
and.
Well, didn't you do spring training or spring? Yeah, you were down in Arizona, right?
Yeah, Sophie?
Yeah.
Last 2 nights.
I thought.
And every time we go down, they beg me to stay and just play baseball. But I tell them, I'm on the Roy City Council.
I've got responsibilities.
I've got responsibility. I can't be down here playing baseball.
That's right. That's right.
Sydney?
I don't.
I don't think Matt believes me.
Okay, let me know when you're ready.
Sorry to-
Hey, just a quick test. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Sophie.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, it's just, I mean, I always thought attorney.
And now we can't talk anymore.
I know, it's, no, we're done. We're done.
All-Star game, my wife's recording it.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
So if you get bored, you can come
Okay.
over and watch it.
Done, deal. Deal.
He's there.
Can you see me?
Mhm.
Way better for me.
Joe says hi.
Oh,
Joe,
you scooted over a seat.
they made sure that
They can't get it on this screen.
Unbroken.
There it is.
There we go. There's Sophie.
Okay.
You ready? Thank you. I'd like to welcome everybody out to Roy City Council meeting for July 16th, 2024. The time is now 5:30. I want to recognize that we have Councilmember Jackson with us tonight. Councilmember Sophie Paul is on Zoom. Councilmember Saxton, Councilmember Scadden, and Councilmember Joe Paul. We've asked Councilmember Jackson if she will go ahead and lead us in a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. Ann?
Please join me in a moment of silence. Will you please stand and repeat the pledge? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ann. Council, we have some consent items, specifically some minutes to meetings, a request approval for alcohol beverage licenses, the May 2024. Let's see Amber here, for financial statement, reappointment of the planning commissioners and appointment of a new planning commissioner. Are there any comments or questions or concerns associated with the consent items? Okay. I think I sent you, in fact, I know I sent you, Brittany, some changes to the minutes. Okay, you got those? Okay, before I ask for a motion, we do have appointed or proposed appointed Planning Commission Jeremy Thompson. Would you stand, Jeremy? Okay. So Jeremy's here with us tonight as part of this process. And so we appreciate your willingness, if approved, okay, to become a planning commissioner for Roy City. Thank you, Jeremy. Okay. Council, any more comments or questions? Okay, it's hearing none and seeing none. Do I have a motion then to approve the consent items?
So moved.
Thank you, Randy.
I'll second it.
Second, Ann, thank you. All in favor?
I
Okay, Okay, any opposed? Hearing none, they are approved. Jeremy, congratulations. Okay, you're part of the team. Thanks for joining us. And I assume, Brody, you'll notify Ryan Coley and Samantha. They have just been appointed for I think it's another 3 years. Yeah, they get 3 times that for 9-year total. So another 3 years. We appreciate their service. Okay, thank you. Okay, public comment period. This is an opportunity to share thoughts, comments, ideas on any topic. Let me just preface this. This is the public comment period to talk about anything and everything you want. There is, in fact, 2 ordinances that are being considered tonight. We're not doing public comment during those things, but certainly if you have things you want to share or talk about relative to those ordinances, please come up to the mic, give us your name and address, and share your thoughts and ideas on anything and everything. I know you. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Kevin Homer. I live here in Roy at 5398 South, 4000 West. I just wanted to share a couple of thoughts on the resolution 24-10 that you all will be talking about a little bit later. The first part of it deals specifically with the ability of an elected official to concurrently be an employee of the city. There's a restriction being placed on that. I think that is a good idea. Shouldn't be an elected official in the legislative branch and then a city staff member in the executive branch. So that part is really good. The other section in 2410, I do appreciate Brody Flint spending a little bit of time with me yesterday discussing this and helping clarify in my mind what's going on with it. I think it is a good idea to put a restriction on city employees from engaging in political activity while they are working. So I do concur with that. I do have some reservations that despite all of his wonderful time that Brody spent with me, didn't quite remove all of that. The definition of political activity seems to be a whole lot broader than I would like to see. I would like to see a little more specificity in that to define political activity as engaging in campaigning for a candidate or campaigning for a party or campaigning for a cause certainly should be restricted while any employee of the city is on the job. Off the clock, First Amendment and all the other constitutional rights should apply. But while they're on the job, engaging in promoting or advocating for those political things, campaigns or parties or causes should be restricted.
That's correct.
Anyway, thank you much.
Thanks, Kevin. And by the way, the personnel policy today states that all the things you just said are not legal in terms of that on the job. Okay, thanks for your input. Anybody else like to share a thought? Ben?
Hi, Benjamin Pearson, 4151 West, 5850 South. Yes, I am here to oppose the proposed ordinance. I ran for city council. It was a good experience, and I'm a city employee. I'm not here as a city employee today. I'm here as a resident. You know, I work 40 hours a week for Roy City, and I'm a resident 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for Roy City. I do agree with Mr. Homer about campaigning while on work time or being associated with any of your campaign duties. And that was already mentioned. It's against the personnel policy. So I was very aware of that when I was running for city council. However, you know, there's basically just 2 stipulations to run for an elected position. And it's you're a US citizen and you've got to live in the same city for 12 consecutive months. Has nothing to do with if you work for the city. Matter of fact, there's lots of different, I was doing a lot of studying when I found out that this was on the agenda, that there's rulings that city employees provide a lot of valuable information for what's going on in the city. And I would just ask, my hope is that you can table this decision to the next meeting, because I've done some research. I've reached out to some state officials for some guidance, and they're doing a lot of research for me, because this is one of those things I explained to Matt Wilson. I'm a very good police officer because I refuse to let people that have been wronged stay wronged. And I believe this is a wrongdoing, and I fight for what's good. And I think that this is the wrong decision. and I will fight it. And I just want clarification first before you make a resolution. So I would ask that you could just table this decision until I do my due diligence in finding this answer, because I have reached out to some higher up officials and I'm waiting back from that, to include the state auditor's office.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ben. Anybody else like to share a thought? We have familiar faces joining us. Diane?
Hello, Diane Wilson, 4302 South, 2675 West in Roy. I am here just to have a few comments in regards to the parking discussion. And Mayor, thank you very much for your white papers. Excellent, as always on that. We had talked about this a little bit last year, how the IADUs with the current policy have to have an additional parking place, but with the homes, I think there's like 70 or 80% of the homes don't have a lot of extra space. You know, they got very narrow side yards, plus the limitation with the side yards, the way it's written. So I'm just asking that you really seriously look at that, because what will happen is it will just promote people to have an internal accessory dwelling unit, but they won't sign up for the license and or other things. Not to mention, I think we may need to even broaden out the recommendation for parking options. Parking is going to be a difficult thing. We've got a lot of difficult subjects that are going to be coming up in regards to the UTA property. Right now, we only have one parking unit per residence, and that doesn't mean people are suddenly only going to have one car. There's going to be parking on the streets. You know, you look at the apartments on West Haven, they're just parking all along every road that you can possibly get. So we want to have the places looking kind of nice, but we also need to have some flexibility for parking. So the options that are available, I think, are important, but we may need to even broaden that at some point in time, because with the rules we have. So right now, really seriously, I asked the question, who can have an IADU and meet the criteria? There may be a few of the larger homes that possibly could do it because their side yards have a little extra space, but that would be a very, very small number. So please look at who would be able to do that and maybe broaden that horizon when you do it. And, you know, I'm not sure today you will be broadening the scope, but at some point in time, that probably needs to be considered. So thank you very much. Thank you for your consideration, and I appreciate you going forward, even though the Planning Commission didn't say much about it. So I appreciate you taking that next step. Okay, good luck,
Thanks,
everyone. Thank
Diane.
you.
Okay. Anybody else like to share a thought? Name and address.
Hi, Trudy Helton. I live at 5342 South, 4100 West in Roy.
Mhm.
And I'm off the subject of anything, but I just wonder if you can give a little bit of a brief on the status of the Senior Citizen Center now, because I started reading things and I understand, and I could be wrong, that Washington Terrace closed permanently. And I don't know if that's because of the road, because it's a mess up there, or it's permanently closed. My daughter says it is. I don't see it on the website. And Huntsville closed and moved that person to North Ogden. So as I reading on the thing where it says it's keeping 4 funded, Washington Terrace would have been one of those. And so now with that other, and then at the end of the year, it's going to go down to 3. And Riverdale's getting a one-time deal. So what is the status? I mean, is Riverdale trying to get into this, to get into the 3? Or you hear things that I go to the one in Riverdale and they said that Riverdale's considering tearing it down and putting apartments, kind of like South Ogden. Now that isn't
Interesting.
normal, that isn't official, but we, South Ogden did that. I lived over in South Ogden. Those houses look like out of a puzzle, actually, like that. Anyway, if you can just give a little bit of update, that'd be great. I know it's to the end of the year, but I mean, where does it end up, or how does it, you know, when do you find out, or anything like that? Thank you.
Okay. Matt, maybe if you could, you and Brittany just released the letter. Maybe you can just make a little bit of a comment about that, because I suspect it will be more than just her has an interest in what the city's position is. Can you take a second and talk about that?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely, Mayor. Thank you. Right now, and not manager's minutes then.
Would you like to do it right now?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think we have a second, so let's make sure that we provide as much transparency as we can on
Yeah.
this.
So I can't really speak to what's going on in Huntsville or up in Washington Terrace or anything else like that. But for Roy City, what they did is they got an email from Kathy, and they're going to limit the services over there and just take down the hours per day that they're operational to save some funding to meet the guidelines of how much funding they have. They initially sent us a letter a few months back asking us to reply to that letter of what we would want out of the senior center by this Friday. We have sent a reply. However, they did reach back out and extended that to sometime in August. So we've already done our letter. The initial letter indicated that they wanted to take that discussion back to Weber Human Services Board sometime in October, and then make every decision effective the following year. So my understanding from the initial conversations that everything was going to remain the same this year, with exception to what you were talking about with Riverdale City, that they were going to add some funding for Riverdale City. So that was kind of the only exception for this current fiscal year. So my guess is, I can't tell you for sure, but Washington Terrace, I believe, is still open. I could be wrong there. What Roy City has decided to do with the letter is to send the letter over to Weber Human Services, and I can provide you a copy of that if you wish. But ultimately saying that we want to provide the same level of service that we do today, meaning that Weber Human Services would facilitate their own program over at the Hope Center. We would be happy to provide the facility. We are happy to provide the maintenance of the facility and upkeep of the facility. That all adds up to around $90,000 a year. And then Weber Human Services, we would wish that they would continue with their support over there as well. It ultimately is a Weber Human Services program, and so it's their decision to be made of what they do with it. So with that input.
Yeah, and I would take advantage, if you will, maybe right after the meeting, we can provide you a copy of the letter that left today from Roy City, our official position in terms of what we're planning and would like to see happen as it relates to the senior center. We're hoping that they will allow us to continue what we're doing. Okay, so if you'd like a copy, it's public. We certainly would like to share that with whoever, but the key would be is that we're excited about the senior center. And to be honest with you, the last 10, 14, 20 years we've been doing this, it's working well. We just don't want to fix something that's not broke. And that's kind of how the letter laid it out. So you're welcome to a copy. Hopefully it'll answer your questions. Okay. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Okay, Jeremy?
Jeremy Thompson, 5879 South, 3850 West. I just wanted to echo my support for Ben in his request maybe to table now. I can finish his research. As I read through the ordinance, I was just struck by, I can understand restricting those in a managerial supervisory position or that would be on some kind of bargaining for the city, not being in legislative representation for the city. I don't really understand the impetus for not having rank and file members that can represent their neighborhood in sections up here. So I'm kind of puzzled at the impetus for that, even though he did beat me by 12 votes last year in the election. So I just want to echo my support for that as well of tabling while he finishes that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for the input. We're hoping to have a good discussion, okay, as we get to that topic in the ordinance. So hopefully we'll be able to satisfy some of the concerns or issues. Okay, thank you. Anybody else like to share a thought? Okay, hearing none and seeing none, we'll go ahead and move out of public comment period. We do have two action items, specifically consideration of ordinance number 24-9. This one dealt specifically with the Title 10 zoning, and I believe, Brody, you're going to go ahead and lead us in the conversation on this one.
All right, thank you. Mayor, Council, thank you. So yes, 24-9 was basically the City Council sent Planning Commission kind of 3 tasks to kind of sum it down. all of which stems from Senate Bill 174, which required specific things of cities to do for internal accessory dwelling units, IADUs. So the three tasks with Planning Commission was basically to have some specific positive language that allowed them, allowed the IADU in the garage. The second one was to look at specific parking requirements within the setbacks for IADUs. And then the third one was kind of a broader look at parking as a whole under section 19 of our zoning code. So the Planning Commission went through several different work sessions and a public hearing on the matter. They recommended changes on the first two issues. They recommended some code changes to 10-17-1, which kind of positively stated, yes, if your garage meets the criteria of state statute, then you can put a dwelling unit in there. Furthermore, they recommended some changes for a side yard setback parking and accessory parking under 1031-1. This is procedurally where it gets a little issue. The Planning Commission actually said to take no action on the third issue, which is essentially 10-19, the parking issue. In looking at some state code changes and things, once Planning Commission has been given a reasonable amount of time, if they don't forward something to this body, it now can act as a negative recommendation, which is how the third issue, essentially 10-19, the chart on parking, comes before the city council. In looking at the staff packet, excuse me, there's quite a few pages here. Their first change on 17-1, or excuse me. Yes. So on 17-1, this is on page 7 of the packet of the staff report, excuse me. I think it's around page 40 something, I think, sorry. But anyway, they recommend changes to say that an accessory dwelling unit within the footprint of a primary dwelling that can include a garage if the garage is a habitable space and connected to the primary dwelling by a common wall for the purpose of a rental unit. So that's the changes they recommended. In looking at state code, I think it complies with the state code requirements, and it's very specific to the garage and allowed that. Staff would recommend approval on that change. And in 1031-1, they added the definition of accessory parking can be an additional approved hard surface parking pad typically located in the side or rear yard used to park recreational vehicles, trailers, or additional personal vehicles. Again, I think that change does make some sense. It requires the surfaces, not just pulling it up on grass or weeds, but it allows people the flexibility to park in some of the side and rear setbacks for the accessory parking. And again, staff think that makes sense, would recommend that change as well. The difficulty now is on the broader scope of parking. We don't really have much guidance except to tell you that the Planning Commission really didn't like it. They didn't really, I think, one of the phrases was they didn't want to open Pandora's box on this issue. So we don't really have a whole lot of recommendation. This is where I think I'll kind of turn it. I know the mayor put a worksheet in to have his thoughts, but I don't really have a lot of guidance to help you as far as what you want to do with it. So there we are.
Thank you, Brody. And the fact of the matter, council, is that I think the Planning Commission specifically on the first two issues did a great job. I think those are solid recommendations. I would recommend you, and you probably have looked at them and felt comfortable that maybe that moves us in the right direction. The piece that they recommended no action, which was highly unusual because their purpose in terms of this tasking was to provide a recommendation. They can certainly recommend not to do it, or they can recommend to do it. And it's that recommendation that helps you in that process, and particularly if you get public input on it, to help you in terms of the guidance. But they kind of left us a little vague here in terms of what to do. And so it's kind of up to you in your opinion. But let me just focus primarily on that issue. And it's only that issue that deals with the side yard parking as it relates only to an IADU. Now I got to make that clear. only to an internal accessory dwelling unit. In which case, the record shows there's only 4 of those in the city. 4 out of over 15,000, okay, residential units. I would suggest that if we look at the context of Table 19.1, and I will read it to you exactly what it says today, and then I'm going to make just a correlation for you to consider. Here's what it says. Table 19.1, which is off-street parking requirements, says for an IADU, a dwelling unit, internal accessory unit, 1 extra parking space, non-tandem, which means it can't be in front of another vehicle or the side of another vehicle. So the vehicle cannot be, that parking space cannot be in back of an existing parking place or the side of a parking place. And it cannot be in the required front setback, which is the front of the house, or the side setback, which is mean any spot on the side of the house. So an individual to have a legal IADU in Royce City today would require them to put the parking space in the backyard, which means they have to lay down an approved parking surface, and they would have to drive from, I assume, the front of the house, in most cases, along the side of the house, and they would have to park in the back, which means the investment to establish an IADU has to also include an official or an authorized parking surface in the backyard. Now, it's always been a little clouded, and we've had this conversation a year ago on the 16th of May on this very issue, which helped us to get to the Planning Commission to literally come up with a recommendation that we have today to look at. So it's been over a year this has been in work. It's actually been 3 years to date since back in 2021 when there was an issue. Some of you were not on the council, but there was an issue dealing with IADUs that actually came before the city council for changes. I gave you in the packet just a visual. And if you don't mind, could you pull that up just so you have that in front of you? It looks like this. Okay, looks like this. And in that visual, so there's just no confusion, this as it sits today, okay, of what the law says. You cannot declare a specific legal parking space in the street. You can certainly park in the street, but you can't designate the street as a parking spot. You can park there, but you can't designate that as one of your parking spots. You cannot park a car under the ordinance, under an IADU. You cannot park in the front of the house. It's the front setback that's in violation. You can't park in the driveway leading up to a garage or a carport, because by doing so, using that as a parking space, it's now in tandem, okay, with an existing parking space. So you can't do that. And the way the law reads today, for only an IADU, you can't park on the side of the house. So the only place you can park is in the backyard. That's exactly how it's written today. Now, interesting enough, the recommendations coming from the Planning Commission, which is the very first thing that Brody talked about, says, and it's perfect. For the first time, we were able to provide very great clarity about what this particular changes were. And so under 10-31, I believe, or 32-1, it basically is the definition portion of the Title 10 ordinance, the definitions. And in it now, if you approve this, it basically now says, and he read it to you, so let me just reiterate what it says. Under this proposal, an accessory parking, which is typically the place on the side of the house, the accessory parking, which is called out, okay, inside of our ordinance as accessory parking, now has a definition. And it says for the first time, an additional approved hard surface parking pad typically located on the side yard or rear yard used to park recreational vehicles. That's important. Trailers or additional personnel personal vehicles. So now, with the approval of the very first thing that Brody brought to the table, we now have absolutely clear direction that you can park now on the side of the house. And council, I will tell you right now, there are hundreds of people in Roy City today that park their vehicles on the side of the house.
Right.
They do.
And a lot of it's on grass too.
And sometimes on grass, which puts Brock in a little difficult position because that may not be an approved surface. And so today, if you approve this in part, with this particular change, we are going to be legal. And there'll be no concerns on the part of Brock trying to figure out, well, can you park there or not park there or anything else? The only issue that we have on the table today for single-family residential parking then is the issue of whether or not you can park if you have an IADU. If you have an IADU without changing table 10-19, you cannot park that car if you have an IAD on the side of the house. That's what it says.
4.
Well, if you have 4 different parking places, you're allowed
No,
to.
no, I'm saying we have 4 IADUs right
4
now.
IADUs.
And where are they parking? Have you noticed?
I couldn't even tell you who the IAD.
I
Well, me
don't
neither.
see a
I
problem
just-
if they have side lot
Sure.
that's on the side of the garage, just like
Yeah.
parking in a trailer.
Yeah, no, RV
parked
pad, what
surface,
we used to
why
call an
couldn't they
RV
park
pad.
a car there?
100%.
So we're just, all we're saying and was hoping we get a reading from the planning commission on this is what their issue. And I understand their point, so I will not let you know their issue because I'll explain that to you from how I understand it. But the fact of the matter is the clarity that finally, if you approve this to this particular parking issue within the residential unit is clear, absolutely clear with the approval. It's never been that way for a long time. We've had this debate for years. I like that part. But here's the issue. The issue is that from the planning commission's perspective, is that, and it was stated in the packet, we have what's called a pseudo, duplex now. If a person decides they want to have an IADU in their basement, for an example, then what it's basically saying is that in essence is, and it was stated in here, that's a pseudo duplex. Because you have a family on the top floor and you have a family on the bottom floor. Now, trust me with this comment. You were here when the legislators basically, many of you were here, when the legislators basically directed every city and county to pass ordinance to include IADUs. That's a state law. We didn't have that before, and I would say we probably didn't necessarily like it, but there was a reason for that. There was purposes in that. But I'm concerned, really, that you at least had 3 other people who it was interested in establishing an IADU, in which case 2 of those people couldn't because the distance from the property line to the house was so narrow, you couldn't get a vehicle legally probably in there. So they couldn't even access, this backyard. So they can't put an IADU in if you can't access the only place you can park a car. That makes sense. If you got a 6-foot vehicle and you only have 7 feet to basically wiggle through, you're probably not going to do well getting a vehicle in it. So there has to be some distance between the house itself and the property line in order to put an access back there. That makes sense. But one of those individuals was denied that IADU, not because there wasn't enough distance. The reason they denied it is because they didn't want to have to tear up their backyard to put a parking lot back there to park that car. And so the city denied them that permit.
You can drive back there, let them park on the side.
If you can drive back there, let them park on the side. So what we asked the planning commission if they would consider was a simple request, and I kind of helped outline what that request was in the packet. It would just simply this, and I made this statement. Just change table 19.1 from where it says 1 space non-tandem to the other required parking spaces. This space shall not be within the required front or side setback. To simply change the wording on table 19.1 to read 1 space This space shall not be within the required front setback. We certainly don't want them parking on the front yard, and we certainly don't want them parking a legitimate spot anywhere in the front. But they can certainly park on the side, and they can certainly park in the back if they want to. But don't let them not have a choice if they want to put an IEDU. The benefit of this is simply this. I honestly believe there's more IEDUs out there
Yeah.
than the city knows about. And we have purposely restricted it so they go underground. Okay? There's no benefit to that. We're not inspecting those houses to make sure they're safe. We're not doing anything except intuitively, we know they're there. Let's not lose the intent of the legislators. The legislators were trying to do everything they can to try to find some elements of affordable housing in this state. The IADU was simply a mechanism to say, hey, and I'll just interpret it from a practical perspective. If I have a basement and my family has grown and they're gone, and I, as an elderly group, simply says, hey, I'd like to make a little bit extra money so I can live in Roy, then why don't you let me have an IDU in I'll rent it. And then I can grab some income that helps cover the expenses. And that's all they're really asking. It's not a duplex. It's simply an IDU in the basement. You know, interesting enough, and I'll shut up with this comment. Council, I could take, if I had everything in place, I could basically bring a family, my family, into that house and put them in the basement, and it's perfectly legal because it's a family. There's no provision of it. It's when it's not related, you put a family down there, that we have to declare that as an IADU if we rent it out. And I just think is that, man, give the residents a choice. If they want to do that, give them a choice.
And I just feel, I mean, how would we ever know who's living in their basement anyway? And I just feel that if your family did move in your basement, more than likely they're going to have more than one car. And I just think I would never want to have to drive and park in my backyard and ruin my backyard. And to where there's only 4, we have complaints about these 4, about where cars are parking. Have there been any complaints to the city about anybody parking?
Right.
So their lots were big enough.
Yeah.
So we just need to put this in case, I mean, it's hard times and a lot of people maybe might turn their garage into, you know, a dwelling. And if they don't have anywhere to park,
How does that work?
I
if
don't
they
know how
turn
you
their
can't park
garage
in-
into a dwelling because
Well-
there goes your primary parking spots.
But that was
Right.
kind of the intent of what we did before, is that was what the behind in the backyard parking was for, was the conversion of a garage.
Say,
Well,
But now what we're saying is they would, case in point, like I could turn around and I could reframe my 3rd car garage now. And if we pass this, I have that RV pad on the side of my house. I now don't have to turn around and put parking in the rear of my house if I go through and convert my garage.
I just don't know how you, unless you're a pretty good driver, I would never let a teenager pull around the back of my house and then try to back out without hitting my house.
Yeah.
I just think that's just, who wants to park in the back of a house? I mean,
Let them park in the side
just
setback.
park
Side
on the
setback, yeah.
side, but I don't even know why it's that big of a deal if they park in front of the garage that they made, you know, an extra room. I don't know. I just think, well, these park where they can fit their car.
Yeah.
Sometimes people just don't have a choice of where they can park their car. As long as it's not impeding any, like somebody from pulling out of their driveway and they're gonna not be able to see their sidewalk and hit a kid or whatever. Just, I don't know. I just think just let them park. I mean, I wouldn't complain about my neighbors unless I went to pull on my driveway and then all their cars were there and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't even see to get out of my driveway. But there's only 4 and who knows how many more there are going to be, but I just feel that we're just putting too many restrictions. I mean, we had that gentleman that came here and said he had a family of 5 move into his house and he had nowhere to park all their cars. And I mean, he tried to get them off the street during the winter, but I don't know. I just feel that sometimes we just put too many restrictions on people who have no choice.
Okay. Other comments, council? Sophie, comments, thoughts?
I do like the being able to park along the side of the home. If you can fit on the side of the home, not going into the backyard, but some, if, you know, if there's not a space on the side, they might have to go into the backyard. I don't know.
Well, and that's still an option. It
It's their
doesn't
choice.
remove, yeah,
You're probably not
Yeah.
getting into the backyard.
yeah, if they're,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
And that, yeah, and I guess to the mayor's point too, is this opens up and now actually codifies that you can now legally, instead of now currently as is, illegally park in that spot.
Mhm.
And that's actually a step in the right direction in my opinion.
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, and so I guess I have to kind of couch this approach with you, and you need to just think of how you want to respond to this. Brody has provided basically to us the recommendations from the planning commission, and he's also the text by which they're recommending placing into the ordinance. I sense the council is comfortable with what has been proposed. Is that a fair statement?
Very fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So the only other thing the council would have to then consider would be is that, are you willing to then allow a single parking spot on the side of the house if the resident wanted to basically put a IDU in their home? Now, I think it gets a little complicated, to be honest with you, if in fact you make that in the garage. Because now the two primary parking spaces are going to be outside of the garage in the front. And by the way, that means the parking is in the front setback. That one gets a little more complicated, that probably needs to be, but that's not really the issue with this ordinance. Table 10-19 only talks to the issue about it mandatory that the property owner have a single parking space designated for the IEDU. That's all.
So, okay, so do we necessarily have to even call out the IADU?
You do, because as it reads today, unless it's changed, you will not be able to, you'll come in, a resident will come in and says, I'd like to establish an IDU in my home. They will go for a permit. The city has no choice, because it's in the ordinance, to simply tell the individual that says, you can place an IDU in your basement if you choose, but you're going to have to put a parking space more than likely in the backyard. That's the only place you're allowed to do it. You can't put it in the front, and you can't, as it reads today, on the sides. What I'm suggesting to you, council, would be is let them park on the side.
That's.
Yeah.
Right.
I-
Let 'em
I-
park
I'm fine
inside.
with that.
Plus, how many garages are so full of stuff that nobody parks in their garage anyway? And they park in front of their garage. I drive by more houses and their garage is open, and I'm like, so there goes their 2 parking spots anyways.
They still park out front.
Yeah.
I'm just saying to you is that if you're okay with that, then I would just ask then the motion to not only include the recommendations by the planning commission as written, but if you're okay with that, also include that we allow a single parking space, an IADU single parking place to occur on the side of the yard, and the side yard they refer to. And I think we can tweak that to be compliant, and it tweaks only table 10-19.
The only question I have is making sure it's the side lot on the garage side, that they're not parking on the side of the house on the grass side.
Well, and that's the thing, is it still has to be on an approved surface, which is, we are defining as concrete. We're not saying it can be grass.
But I don't think you can have
Can it be
driveways on
gravel?
both sides of your house.
And that is a good point. Quite frankly, the code would take care of that, because if they're allowed to have an approved surface on either side that they have access to, whether it be, there's so many things that go into that, right? You could have a curb cut and an entrance, you could have a long driveway, you could around the back. There's plenty. Mostly it's going to be on the garage side, right?
Correct.
But I don't think we need to legislate that, because all the curb cut requirements, the
That's covered
setbacks,
elsewhere.
all the other things would take care of, because there might be locations, I think it would be minimal, but where you could park on the non-garage side as well.
Right, because more and more people are getting rid of the grass and just putting gravel over there anyway.
They are.
So,
Well, that's a different issue. for a
Yeah.
different day.
Yeah, don't open up that one, Ann. That's-
but how would Brock even know if he drove by a house and even know if they had one in their basement? I mean,
You wouldn't.
no, you wouldn't. So it's kind of a hard thing to
As long as people are
enforce,
parking in
but,
the spots they're allowed.
and there's probably people that have them in their basement. We don't even know and they never even got a permit. So
That's right.
just, so.
And I will tell you, it's even more complex than that. And certainly Brody could talk to this if you ask him. But the fact of the matter is that there is nothing out there that limits an individual saying is that I'm going to run out of bedroom. And there's nothing the city can basically do to stop them.
Right.
So forget about the IEDU issue.
Yeah.
Just think about advertising, I'm going to rent out my bedroom if you want to, and there's nothing we can do to stop
Rent
that.
out all your bedrooms, your front room, partition off your kitchen. There's a house in West Haven where that's currently happened.
Exactly.
And it's allowed.
Because they can't stop it. It's complex. So I think there's a real solution here that will help. And I'm not saying we're going to see a number of people step up and say, yeah, I want to put an IDU in, but it certainly gives the landowner a choice. If the city will simply allow it, common sense allow them to say, yes, I can designate a single parking space on the side of my yard, in the side yard. And because I can already, based on everything we've got and certainly what's about being considered to be approved, it allows it anyway. The restriction only happens if it's an IEDU.
Right.
So,
Is allowed, yeah.
So yeah, it sounds like a good thing to me.
okay, if we're okay with that, then I need a motion to approve. Who would like to take a shot at how to frame this?
I'll just interject. If the council is so inclined to follow the recommendation to allow it for the IDU, the simplest thing would be to approve ordinance 24-9 as written with the added table from 19-1 that's on page 46 of the packet. That gives it the
Yeah.
clarity that we need.
Copy paste whatever he said.
Okay.
Does that work?
Okay.
I don't know.
No, and that would be the motion to approve as written ordinance 24-9 and then amend table 19-1 to allow the single space parking on the side setback.
You could just say
As
Mr.
stated
Flint
by,
indicated.
As stated?
as stated or as indicated in the packet on page
Okay.
46.
You okay? Anyone want to take a shot at that?
Go for it.
yeah.
Please.
I'm
This is a good one. This one gets you thinking. I need a motion.
all right.
He's got it.
Here we go, Randy.
All right.
Go.
Motion to approve ordinance 24-9 as stated in the packet with the amendment to table 19-1 for the for the allowance of side setback parking for individual vehicles. Is that
You okay with that?
with specifically for an IADU?
I like that. Matt, you okay with that?
I'll
Yes.
second it.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. This is a roll call vote. Brittany?
Jackson,
I,
Councilmember Scadden,
Aye.
Councilmember Sophie Paul,
Aye.
Councilmember Saxton,
Aye.
Councilmember Joe Paul.
Aye.
Council, ordinance 24-9 is approved. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we now have ordinance 24-10, an ordinance of Roy City establishing certain prohibitions on political activities. I think, Matt, you're going to share some thoughts on this. Please, leads the instruction.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council. My goodness, I can't talk. Usually when you say Matt, I sit back and relax because I think this is
Matt,
who you're
Matt.
talking to.
We got lots of Matts here. Yes.
As you're aware, ordinance 24-10 does address different political activity. The first being that there can't be any, well, really the target of this whole ordinance is no self-dealing on one side or the other. So we don't want council and mayor to be self-dealing and basically ensuring that they have some employment. Want fair market to be able to address that or just go through that process and have the most qualified candidates for those positions. Second part of this ordinance is that prohibition of maintaining full-time employment here with the city while being elected to a Roy City elected office or appointed to. So if there was a vacancy here, it would prevent that as well, being appointed to either mayor or city council positions. Let me just kind of give you some background to this. So initially, this started with the state auditor bill that I can read you what their proposed language was. It just added to a certain section in state code that already addresses something that our personnel policy addresses as well as this ordinance, but it's a lot of this prohibitions on political activity. And if anyone's interested and wants to nerd out and read code with me, we can. But it's 10-3-1108. The proposed language that they started with was a municipal elected officer may not have any other compensated employment with the municipality. That obviously did not even go for a vote. It was pulled from consideration. My understanding is that they wanted to leave that to cities, individual cities, to make those determinations. Other states do have mixed laws on this. There's some states that say, no, city cannot prevent that from happening, and other states do have laws that say exactly what state auditor's office was going to run, and that you can't hold municipal elected office along with your municipal full-time employment, your compensated employment. There are other cities here in the state that do have it. I know two for sure. I know there's more, but I don't have those cities. But Ogden City as well as Salt Lake City both have similar ordinances that do that. As I stated, it is to prevent self-dealing on both sides of the aisle here. And then just in consideration of the legality of this, as you're aware, the federal laws do have the Hatch Act, which has been challenged and successfully defended. Obviously, there's been some amendments to that law over the years, but it does prevent federal employees from gaining elected office in the federal system. It does also apply to anyone that does receive federal funding. So it would apply, obviously, there's some different things in there, but I won't get into and bore everyone with the minutia of the Hatch Act. But regarding the legality, I have done my research. I know Mr. Pearson has concerns about legality, and he said he reached out to a senator that also had some concerns with this and believed that it was illegal. Respectfully, I disagree with that. I think that the city does have authority to be able to do this, and I haven't found anything that does prevent the city. If there is something out there, I've asked if there was something to be provided to me. Nothing's been provided to me to show that we do not have authority to do so. And municipalities do have certain powers, especially legislative powers, that you're able to enact through ordinance. So I know that's a mouthful. I also do have a suggested change to the ordinance. I can read that now if you have questions, then I can read it after. How would you like me to?
Please, I think it's important to hear what that is.
Okay, so that is in the ordinance, it would be under 1-7-7 sub E part 2 there. So my suggested change would be for it to read, if an employee or officer is elected to a public office that is a full-time elective office or Roy City elected office, the employee shall be placed on a leave of absence without pay. However, the employee may elect to use any accrued vacation leave in accordance with state and federal law. Any and all full-time employee benefits shall be paused until full-time employment is resumed.
So the change was just, it was with or without.
Yes,
And
it took out some other stuff in there just in regards to that, such as the request shall be approved or denied. It's just blanket
without, period.
without pay. And that's also actually, there is in state code that does state that that a municipal employee who has been elected may be given a leave of absence without pay. And it's in that same section. It doesn't give the option of with or without pay. So.
Yeah. Okay. Council, any questions for
Well,
Matt?
Out of curiosity, how come this all of sudden, I mean, we've never, I mean, all these years and now how come all of a sudden we have this? I mean, I can understand sometimes if you had, you know, somebody who worked here and then something came up about where they worked, and then that would be a conflict of interest and how they would vote or maybe persuade people because they do work in that position. And I can see that, but I just don't understand why. I mean, I've been on the council like 5 years, and I mean, how come all of a sudden? I just was wondering.
That's a great question. So it did start with the state auditor's bill, and this stemmed from there being other issues throughout the state. I don't know that there was many municipalities. I'm aware of at least one, and I don't recall which exact municipality that was, but that became an issue. I had discussed this actually with someone from the state auditor's office. They believed there was something in state code that prevented this, which did not, because they were asked to write basically an audit letter about that issue. So it started from that, but there are conflicts of interest that could arise. There's also administrative concerns, being that, say you have an employee that is disagreeing with their supervisor, or there's some insubordination occurring, and say it's even a department head, and then they put their other hat on as city council member who's now over that department head. Obviously, there's some lines of authority before that, but there's some clear administration concerns that would arise there, because you'd have someone that, you know, if they're being written up for insubordination and they don't like that,
Right.
they can pull some strings and circumvent that.
And I will indicate to you, I have sat through interviews to select a city manager in Roy as a city council member. And sitting city council members were on that list and were interviewed. They could not be in the selection process, meaning is they excused themselves because they could not be part of the selection process, but because there was no limitations, a sitting city council member was being interviewed for Matt's job. And I was in those interviews.
Yeah, it's a dual allegiance is effectively what they call it, because it's the duality of I can vote myself in, plus I can appoint myself in. So it's a huge conflict of interest from that
Conflict.
perspective. Yeah.
And so the struggle I had in as a city council member was the fact is that you know, I won't go into the details, but I am telling you, that's a hard one, because it is the city council that selects the city manager. It's not anybody in the departments. It's the council. And it is the council wants the city manager. In fact, I'll be honest with you, I was here when we changed that to allow the city manager to select the department heads, because there was a time in Roy City that decision did not rest with him totally. It rests with the city council. And so I'm sitting there thinking, talk about some conflicts. And the frustration that I had while I was sitting there is that I had good city council members, okay, interviewing for the city manager's job. And all it took was 4 votes. Mayor has a vote and 3 city council. And the decision, interesting enough, never selected the city council members, but talk about conflict. I mean, I struggle even today that I sat through that nightmare, and there were no provisions within city code or, interesting enough, state code that prevented that. And yet, can you imagine, okay, finding yourself in that conflict, making that decision when you're in fact trying to select somebody for that position, and you know darn well that you got a city council member who's now interviewing for that job? That's just not right. I mean, for the first time, to be honest with you, Chief, you guys experienced this. I can understand why there's a delay, as painful as that is, from a person retiring, okay, from state or from local government service and having some time elapse before they're basically hired again. And I thought that it didn't make any sense to me. But I'm telling you, it brought that whole thing to my surface on that issue. And I felt incredibly uncomfortable trying to interview a city manager job when in fact, okay, I had city council members wanting that job just as bad as everybody else. And that is painful because what was ever going to come out of that? However that would arrest, I'm now sitting as a city council member next to a city council member who may, even to this day, although we didn't release what the votes was, may basically feel uncomfortable about me basically going up there and basically not voting for that individual. That's wrong. I just should not be put through that. That was not what I should have had to do, and I had to do that. Sophie, you have a comment.
Yeah, a quick question on this. So on this, it says a full-time employee can take a leave of absence if elected or appointed to an elected position. With that being said, does that mean they can take the leave and then have a position guaranteed after their 4 years or whatever? Is that how that reads, Matt? Like, would there be a guarantee of a job? I would never want somebody to not be able to run and not have their job when they're done.
Yes, that's correct. They would have that position held for them until they were done there. And
Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
So if we are like, if we fill that position, because we need that filled, office clerk, whatever, that needs to be filled. And then how do you move them when their 4 years is up? That's what I kind of, how does that work?
I've actually never seen it at Roy City, but I've seen it happen at the state where they'll issue jobs, full-time employment for a temporary basis. So they'll give
Okay.
a timeline on that employment. So it is possible.
And we're always looking. I'm not saying there wouldn't be a job because there's always a job. So, okay.
Yeah, it creates an interesting challenge, Sophie, in large part because we've had city council members in this city who were elected for 20 years.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until the 20th or 21st or 20, whatever year that was, they filled the position for 20 years. It wasn't until they were not elected again that it stopped. But they were basically an employee, okay, as a city council member for 20 years. And I'm thinking to myself, I says, so that creates an interesting challenge if you think about that, is that how long do you leave that position vacant? 20 years? This has got some really interesting challenges on all sides of this issue. Council, and if the argument really comes down to says, hey, maybe there's a good discussion here that says maybe we just need to table and allow us to gather more information, then certainly you can make that motion. But I'm just indicating to you is that some cities have addressed this issue head on and they've got solutions. I just hope you don't find yourself as a council member or as mayor in a situation where you're faced with a situation where you now have this issue that you're facing when in fact a mayor or a city council member says, I want a city employment job. And I'm going to do everything I can in my political power to get that job. That's just not right.
No.
And you have to, you as the legislative body have to do everything you can to make sure that everything that happens, okay, in this city is above ground. It is legal, it's ethical, and it's right.
So
And you
then
can do
you
that.
feel this is a good thing that we should. you
I
feel
think
this
there's
is
some
good?
really good in here. I think there's maybe some questions that still need to be answered. Certainly Matt has done a nice job trying to frame that. But council, at the end of the day, if you say, hey, I think there's some opportunity, we need to gather some more information, then take the time. But you need to do something. You need to do something.
Right.
And it's not you, because I'll be honest with you, I have all the faith in the world about Matt. He is absolutely above reproach. He basically is as trustworthy as anybody I know. But I will tell you, there's not a lot of Matt Andrews around. And you get the wrong person sitting at this bench or you get the wrong person in that position, and I am telling you, Roy City could get itself in a lot of trouble. How you fix that is you pass laws and you put restrictions that keeps us things, in my opinion, above board, keeps it right. And you have the authority to do that. And if today's not the answer where you can get that, you want to ask more questions, then take the time. But please consider what he's asking, because I think there might be some merit in terms of assuring that we don't face the issue. I am telling you, I had 2 sitting city council members, okay, interviewing for a city manager's job.
Well, thank heavens you picked Matt Andrews and not those council members.
was
Brian,
one-
I'd like to know what you think about it, Brian. What do you think about this?
What do I
Yeah.
think?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we have to be above all things transparent, I think. And when I seen this ordinance on the agenda, I called some people and said, "God, but first of all, what I asked the question you asked, which was, where's this coming from?" And then I asked questions regarding, has it ever been a part of Roy City history? And I had discovered, yes, it had been. And I actually remember it. I wasn't on the council then. I was just a reporter, but I remember it. And so if you're asking me, I have nothing but respect for people that run for public office. It is grueling. It is never popular. And the treats, sometimes people don't bring cookies to the meetings. That being said, I know that people like Benjamin Pearson has a deep regard for the city and would like to share in that. And I, like I said a couple of weeks ago, when he was Employee of the Month, he's a very competitive soul. And I hate to rob anybody of that spirit, but the old Brian Saxton would say, don't mess with something like this. The mayor's right on this one, in that you would hate to be sitting next to somebody that could be your next city manager that was your peer at that point. It could really create some problems. And so as a result, thanks, Ann, for putting me on the spot. But if there's questions that still need to be answered, I would say table it. But if it's pretty cut and clear, say we've got to approve the ordinance.
I know when Ben ran, I mean, I had a lot of talks with him but I always did think, what if, like when we talk about the budget and getting more money for the police department, and then when we talk about different things that concern the police department, I mean, he'd just have to recuse himself, I guess, from
Right.
all those things. And so I would hope that he wouldn't try to influence, other council members, but so I'm just kind of on the fence about, I mean, I would never want to be in the mayor's position where he was having to decide that also. So I don't know if we should table it and get more information. What do you think, Joe?
Well, I guess the question is, what more information are we looking for?
And
Yeah.
it's also codified in state code. That's the other thing that we have to look at too, correct?
So it was,
certain portions of it are.
Okay.
But that last portion saying that, so the part that is not codified in state code was that section I read to you, a municipal elected officer may not have any other compensated employment with the municipality. That is not codified in state code.
Okay, okay. That's, but that would essentially with this ordinance would be us codifying it as part of our.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, and that's where, and that's, sorry if I wasn't clear. So there
Yeah.
were other cities that have codified that.
Correct. And we're talking Ogden, Salt Lake.
Correct. There are more, but like I said, I don't have those specifically.
Your big ones, Ogden, Salt Lake.
Right.
Correct.
In large part because they probably have faced this issue many times and they simply says they just needed an answer and they solved it by passing an ordinance.
Well, I mean, look at it from this perspective. Let's say hypothetically, Mr. Pearson had gotten elected. He would have to more than likely recuse himself during every budget cycle. So let's go back and look back at our most recent. We would have had a split council, right? Because his vote is now diluted. And so you go from a council of 5 down to 4.
Guess who gets to vote?
Bingo, exactly. And I'm saying the system does allow for it, but it turns around and puts in those types of situations, it shifts the power dynamic into the mayor's.
That's exactly what they're, and I will tell you, for the record, there's not a meeting I don't come to that I don't prepare to have a vote.
Right. Yeah.
So the key is that that's our function. We have to be able to do that. The question you have to be asking, and remember, there's two parts. There's a part that deals with the issue about an elected official going into city government employment. And there's an issue about, and I think Matt was very clear, there's a position that talks about employees in city government coming into elected positions. It's twofold, looking all sides of this issue. So if you feel that we basically can take a vote, I'll call for a motion to vote. If I don't get a motion to vote, I can certainly take a motion to table. And I'm willing to accept either one of those. But if there's any other question, and let's not deny Joe's comment. He basically said, he simply says, so what else are you looking for?
Yeah.
What kind of other information you need?
That's exactly what Brian just said. Like, what additional information are we looking?
Yeah. Sophie, do you have a comment on this issue?
No,
Okay.
I'm good.
So an employee though could like serve on the planning commission, just not on the council?
It's an appointed position. But the planning commission doesn't
'Cause it's an
basically,
They're a recommended body. They're not a legislative. That I guess there's.
yeah, there is a difference, an
Bit of
appointed
ambiguity.
position versus an
But
elected.
it is an appointed position.
All right.
So
Okay.
it would be covered, right?
Correct. Could not serve planning commission.
Okay. Okay. The reason for that comment was more because we have a planning commissioner who in fact is elected to a position at the county level.
Not anymore.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So I have to get their careers have
Yep, yep,
shifted a
yep.
bit, trying to make sure we were correct, because he could not run here. Okay. I mean, it gets a little bit more
Yeah,
interesting.
he couldn't. Yeah.
So he's elected and appointed. Okay, but won't get too complicated with that. Council, any other comments or questions? I have an ordinance in front of me, okay? I need to take action on this ordinance. So here it is. Do I have a motion then to approve 2410, an ordinance of the Roy City establishing certain prohibitions, okay, on political activities of employees and prohibitions of employment of elected officials? Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Randy, do I have a second?
You have a question?
I just have a question. Is that with the change that I stated?
Sorry,
earlier?
Yes.
that's a good point. With the change that has been
With the
provided.
changes that have been.
Thank you. Okay,
And
Section B, subsection G should say E.
Oh, yes.
yes, okay, I sent
correction
that to you.
of the
Okay,
typo.
yeah, thank you. Yes, that was in D and it should have said subsection E. Okay. So that plus the amendments that Matt provided.
Correct.
Okay, you okay with that?
Yes.
Approval.
So, yep.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Sophie? Okay, this is a roll call vote. Brittany?
Aye.
Councilmember Scadden,
Aye.
Councilmember Joe Paul,
Aye.
Councilmember Sophie Paul,
Aye.
Councilmember Jackson.
Aye.
Okay, ordinance 24-10 is approved with the changes, Matt, that you identified. Okay? City manager and council report.
Yes,
Matt?
thanks, Mayor. Just a couple of things for tonight. Chief Gwen's been working with UDOT up on 1900 West for a beacon. Just out here in front of the fire station, 4975 South. If you've gone by there, it looks pretty good. So thank you, Chief Gwen, for doing that. I was going to mention the letter with Weber Human Services that has been submitted. I did speak a little bit about that earlier this evening, so, but that has already been sent. Save a couple of dates. Complex grand opening is August 1st, 6 p.m. And then also we're working with Just Serve to do a little bit of a cleanup this weekend. It's actually Saturday.
Yep.
From 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. Things are looking pretty good over there. But if you have a second, come over during that time and help us clean. So, and then also another save the date, working on some projects for the day of service. That's going to be August 24th this year. We're planning on doing that in correlation with the Aquatic Center again. So, and that's it.
Okay. Council, any other comments or questions?
I just have had a couple of residents reach out to me, and I was in as Brandon talked to you about this. They had the new meters put in, and they said they have them up so high that they can't mow their lawn no more because the meters are up too high. And so they have to weed eat around it, or they just said it's a pain in the butt. So is there anything you can do about something like that, or? So reach out to the secondary water and so, okay. Okay, because the one person I talked to said that the one lady did reach out and then she's never gotten any response. So do they just keep nagging and calling, or?
Call Bill Durbano. He's, I'm not giving you his direct line, but
I'm pretty sure I have his number. Okay. Yeah. And so hopefully the people that hit the gas line or got all the blue stakes marked a little bit better this time. So don't have any incidents like that. I mean, that was kind of scary, but I'm glad it got resolved very fast. So I don't have anything.
Anything else, council?
I'm just excited for the complex to open. So I'm tired of telling people June, July, August. And so
I
hopefully we
appreciate all
get
the
a good
work that's-
turnout.
all the
So
work that's gone into that.
Yeah.
From the sewer board, August 21st, they're doing an open house. I think it's from like 1 to 3. I think they'll send city manager and public works director, if anybody wants to go out there. It's going to be the grand opening of the new pump station where they're pumping out the 65-inch line out into Gilbert Bay. So they will no longer be dumping into, it's probably a bad word. They'll no longer be discharging into Farmington Bay. They'll be discharging out into Gilbert Bay. The project is under budget and it's ahead of schedule. So they're just basically tidying up, landscaping, painting, cleaning up, things like that. So they're going to make a big deal out of it. They're going to have the media out there. They're going to have the Great Salt Lake, whoever the group that's protecting the lake, because it does go a long ways to try to help the lake. Fortunately, the water level, when they looked the other day, is up to the outfall. They had in the budget to trench a half a mile or more. And we're thinking when we're in the drought, we may have to go out a couple of miles.
Wow.
It's actually right up to the outfall. So they said as soon as they start pushing, it'll trench itself and
Wow,
It'll
that's cool.
form a new trench. So, biggest thing this side of the Mississippi that's happened in an HDPE pipeline, big project.
And the date of that open house is again?
August 21st
Okay.
is a
August 21st with the,
Wednesday.
yeah, I guess. They have to look at the date.
I just heard
Okay.
it's the first day of school.
Yeah.
Sophie, do you have a comment?
Yeah, just a quick, I've been watching that tower go up in the pool parking lot. And I totally can appreciate that they don't work during the pool hours because that parking lot gets so full of people. So I remember when they had said they won't work during the pool hours. And so I appreciate that just as a pool goer. But is it almost done, Matt? Do you know?
Yeah, I don't believe so. It's gonna go on for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, they're working on it all the time. It was just kind of cool to watch.
Okay, perfect. Randy?
I'll just have everybody draw your attention to a fire department call volume PowerPoint that Chief Williams sent out at roughly about 2 o'clock this afternoon. Just wanted to highlight that year over year, our total calls that we've taken and run from 2023 of this same time last year to now is 10% higher. So our fire department is running their butts off. So yeah, just wanted to draw your attention to that and just take an opportunity to go through and take a look at that when you get a chance. And I don't know if you're planning on doing some type of presentation down the road, but just wanted to put that out there. Fair. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, good. Brian, anything?
I'm excited to see that the OKU restaurant is coming along. And that will be, I mean, when you look them up, they have gotten really favorable reviews out of Sandy. And so
Is that the
will-
ramen house, the one you're
Yeah.
talking about? Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm excited for that
I am
too.
too.
And
Yeah.
so I noticed with our approval tonight that they're a step closer.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
It's exciting.
that is good news.
right. It's good to fill that vacant.
Okay,
Sushi
so.
and fizzy water with a touch of alcohol. That was the approval tonight, right?
you approved it.
So that gas station that we approved, that's the old Sinclair right next to the bowling alley. Where we,
Right over
Yeah.
here.
yeah, that's the one. Okay, so somebody bought it and changed it, the name and.
Ship.
Okay, just a couple of things, council. Miss Roy pageant, a competition will take place this Saturday at 6 p.m. If you can join, please be there. Obviously, a big event as we begin the kickoff for the Roy Days events with that. And let me just touch, if I can, Matt, you and I, Brody and Brandon said through the UDOT meeting today. I think it's important if we can just maybe articulate about how the project for 5600 widening is going. We don't have to get too many details, but because there's some individual things that are still working through that, but maybe you can share just for a second what we learned today from the contractor and UDOT.
So things are actually going very well, other than we hit a gas line. Well, they hit a gas line. We had nothing to do with that. But they've been obviously working on the flyover up over by the Spooey, the off ramp. A big date this year. They're trying to get the overpass for the DRNG for the school kids. It won't be done by by the start of school, because they're waiting for the big pillars to come across. And during our meeting last week with UDOT, they might be doing a video, or they're going to be able to let us come out and watch that at night if we want to see that set. But they should be around October-ish. You should be seeing within the next 8 days, they're going to start doing curb and gutter down 5600 South. They're doing some of the, I can't remember what they called it, but the elevation work where the road would be. So a lot of the utilities and stuff are coming to completion down 56. So they're really moving along. I think you're going to really start seeing the first part of the project was demolition. Next part of the project was utility work that you really didn't see, but a lot of work was going on. So this part of the project, you're probably going to see a little bit more progress, it seems like. So
Yeah, and to echo Matt's point, they're anticipating we'll have blacktop on the south side of 5600 this year.
Yep.
And once that's done, they'll shift the traffic to the south of 56, and then they can start working the north side of 56, and that will be completed next year. I'm optimistic, Matt, Brody, Brandon, we could see at least the 56 done maybe as early as middle of next year. I think the real pressing issue will be is Union Pacific getting access to start building the bridge.
So one of the things they did share last week in our meeting is that they did finally get the approval. So
For the UP?
For the UP, they
Okay.
have been waiting for roughly a year and a half, I believe, on that. So the initial approval came in so they can go in, and they asked us for access to the detention basin to start working that area now.
Yeah, that's great news. One last thing, if you don't mind, Chief, let me just tell you something. I remember you standing here and you talking to us about,
Yeah, there's.
yeah, I'm sorry, Chief Gwen. But you know, if you talk about chief, they do a lot of remarkable things for this city. So if you say one remarkable thing to a chief, you're saying it to both because they do great things for us. But Chief Gwen, I remember very clearly when you talked to us about trying to find a solution to protect the pedestrians on 1900 West. Okay? I remember that clearly. And you had this vision. You talked about a beacon and you says, I'm thinking we need to put an island out there in the middle because those kids, and remember the interesting thing I think you made point is this, when those kids are moving back and forth, we have crossing guards there, but when they're going to school, there is nothing there for them crossing that street when they're not going to school. And yet they still cross the street. And you says, we need to do something. And I'm telling you, and you can confirm that, Matt, you alluded to it a few minutes ago. I just want to emphasize this. Today, okay, you got an island, you got beacons, and today I actually seen pedestrians safely, okay? They didn't have to mix through the traffic. They safely were able to cross that crosswalk on 1900. One of the most challenging, okay, of the areas we have in the city in terms of traffic. And I just says, all of that happened, Chief, because you had a vision and you carried it out. I'm telling you, thanks. And I can certainly see it, but I can't help but think that those people who live on the other side, okay, if they knew that you had responsibility to make that happen, would probably be up here shaking your hand because I'm telling you that made a difference. Thank you. Well done. Council, that's all I have. Okay. If there is nothing else, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I knew you were coming, Joe. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Ann. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you. Have a good day.